Mr. Chairman, I've been able to get the recording started. Are you ready for me to read the instructions?
Yes, Mr. Nish, you may begin.
Okay. This is, again, a virtual meeting of Newtown Township. Happens to be the Board of Supervisors meeting. We are taking public comment in one of four ways this evening. If you wish to drop off public comment in the blue drop box in front of the building, you're more than welcome to have done that. I will say we did check the box before the meeting and there was no public comment in the box. I just checked it. You may also raise your hand virtually in the meeting if you're on by through Zoom through the screen. If you're on by phone, you can also do it through the phone as well. If by chance you have trouble doing either one of those and you still wish to make public comment and be recognized, please send an email to publiccomment@newtowntownship.org. Public comment, all one word, at newtowntownship, also one word, .org. In doing so, please make sure you include your name and address, as well as whatever your sign on onto the Zoom call is. If you're on by a phone number, whatever phone number you use to call in, or if you're on the screen, whatever name is on the screen. If by chance you just want to make public comment and not do so publicly, you can do it through the public comment at newtowntownship.org by sending the email, and we will make sure that it gets read into the record. Mr. Chairman, I will turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Neese. My apologies for starting late this evening. We had a pretty full executive session. During executive session, we were discussing 4 personnel matters and 1 or 2 potential legal matters for the township. So with that being said, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Mr. Neese, will you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Mr. Nawn.
Present.
Mr. Partridge.
Here.
Ms. Roberts Lightcap.
Here.
Mr. Russo.
Here.
Mr. Altieri.
Here.
Your alternate township solicitor's here, your engineer is here, and your manager is here.
Thank you, Mr. Neese. For a moment of silence tonight, I'd like to keep in mind everybody who's out driving and walking on our roadways and byways. We've had a tough year and more. A lot of us have not moved a lot, and we seem to be re-entering the roadways, both as pedestrians and bicyclists and vehicle operators. And let's keep in our thoughts and our prayers all those who are doing that right now, in hopes that everyone stays safe and everybody remembers how to drive. Okay, we have before us this evening's agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as written or consideration of any changes.
So move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made by Supervisor Roberts Lightcap, seconded by Supervisor Russo to approve this evening's agenda as written. Any further questions or discussions from members of the board on this item? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next on the agenda is public comment for agenda items. We have received 1 comment from somebody in our public comment mailbox. They are not online right now. They have asked that it be read. So I will read this aloud so everybody can hear this. This is from Diane Riccio of 209 4th Avenue, Newtown Square, Pennsylvania. Her email states, in 2009, Mr. George Cordes told Mr. Harry Robinson, assistant zoning officer at the time, that Mr. Larry Robinson, owner of 218 4th Avenue, would need a subdivision and a variance to build on his property. In 2016, Mr. Robinson reapplied for a variance of the same property, stating that he did not need a subdivision, which was not true, and was given a variance without a quorum of the zoning hearing board. I appealed the decision to the Commonwealth Courts, and it was remanded back to the zoning hearing board in 2019. Again, problems ensued, a major one being the zoning hearing board lost all of my exhibits and granted the variance again. I'm now in the process of appealing their decision again, as I did not receive due process. The property has a Z, capital letter Z, which means that it is one property with two tax folio numbers and needs to be subdivided. The 2008 zoning hearing board assigned Mr. Mike Sheraton to represent the neighbors, me, and the township in this matter. Recently, you sent an attorney to represent the neighbors and the township for the 123 Walnut case, which has the same issues as my case, and the zoning hearing board denied that application. I'm asking for your help. It is not too late to join my appeal. Sincerely, Diane Riccio. At this moment, I will open up the floor to any other folks in the audience that may have a comment regarding any items that appear on this evening's agenda. So far, I see one hand. Patty Wilson, Mr. Neese, will you allow Ms. Wilson to speak? Go ahead, Patty. Says her microphone's on.
I don't hear her though.
I don't hear her either. Turn up your volume.
Patty, I'm going to remove your permission to talk and and give it again. So let me see what happens.
Patty Wilson, 4111 Lane.
We got you now. Go ahead.
Marvelous. Really thrilled to see that Diane Riccio has reached out to you in a matter on the zoning hearing board, and absolutely hope that you will take her comment and do something about it. My other comment for tonight related to an agenda item is I see you have the historic ordinance on the agenda. Thrilled to see that. Long time coming. Hope you are ready, willing, and able to make that happen tonight and as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Wilson. I will note that this has been on the agenda before the historic ordinance, and we were ready, willing, and able to do it a few months ago. But the Historic Society asked for time to review it. So I think we'll see how it goes, but I'm pretty sure we're ready, willing, and able to do it now again, too. So I see one other hand, Don Petroza. Mr. Neese, could you allow Mr. Petroza to speak? Go ahead, Don.
Yes, thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, thank you. I didn't know that this was on the agenda. I just happened to notice it right now, but I do represent Larry Robinson. And I would indicate, I'm not going to get into the merits because personally, I don't think it's appropriate right now. But this case, the zoning hearing was in December of 2019. The decision of the zoning hearing board was in January of 2020. It's now been about 16 months since this occurred. And I would respectfully submit that it is too late for the township to intervene. I don't think the township should intervene anyway, but one of the standards is the township can intervene as of right within 30 days of the date of the filing of the appeal, which was sometime in January of 2020. And the second issue is that it's already been fully briefed and it's scheduled for oral argument in court next Monday, 1 week from today. So I think even if the township were inclined to intervene, they'd have to file a petition to intervene, which we could object to. And one of the issues is whether or not the delay in intervention has prejudiced the applicant. We've been trying for a very long time back in 2016 to move forward with this. What Ms. Riccio says about the zoning hearing board proceeding without a quorum is true, but what she didn't mention is I was the one who pointed that out and asked that the matter be continued. It was not continued. The zoning hearing board forced us to go to a hearing, so we did. And then in fact, the Commonwealth Court quoted me from the hearing in remanding it back for further proceedings, which occurred in 2019. So that's all I wanted to say. I think there's some inaccuracies in what's set forth here, but again, I don't want to get into the merits. I just, on a procedural issue, I think it's inappropriate at this late stage after 15, 16 months for the township to attempt to intervene.
Thank you, Mr. Petrosa. I see no other hands up. Assuming there is no other public comment, we will then move ahead. Item number 8 is minutes. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the March 22nd, 2021 meeting or consideration of any changes.
I'll make a motion to approve the March 22nd, 2021 meeting minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made by Supervisor Altieri, seconded by Supervisor Roberts Lightcap to approve the minutes from the March 22nd, 2021 meeting as written. Any further discussions from members of the board on this item? Seeing none or hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next on the agenda is a presentation on the historic ordinance by Doug Humes of our Newtown Square Historic Society. And I'm going to ask Mr. Neese to make sure Mr. Humes has the floor, and we will let him speak and wow us.
Doug, you should be able to speak if you will unmute your mic. We are not hearing you.
Can you hear me?
Now, yes.
Yes. Okay, great. Well, as Steve said, I'm here for the Newtown Square Historical Society. I did a little presentation just to get a couple of themes across. We're told to keep it short. We will keep it short. And I just want to talk a little bit about preservation in Newtown, and then our president, Cathy Cavalier, will talk about the outreach efforts with the owners of these historic sites. So for us, preservation, I say it's a window to the past. It connects us with the people who settled here and the people who have lived here for 300 years, with the buildings they lived in and built, and yet this is a hard argument to make to some people. There are people that like Levittown, that are perfectly content with that, and there are other people who like New Hope or Newcastle or Narberth or Media, Old City, all places that have done a great job of preserving the old and integrating it into the new. They're not Williamsburg theme parks. They're actual living places that people live in and work in, but they reuse their old buildings. And it's frankly, it's a matter of aesthetics, and you can choose one or the other. You can choose Levittown, or you can choose to try to preserve what we still have. You want to flip that next page. So these 5 buildings should be familiar to all of you. These are our 5 National Register sites in Newtown Square, dating back as old as 1715, 1742, 1828. Yeah. No, keep up there. So these National Register is the highest preservation status you can really claim. It's things of national significance. We have these 5 at least. They've been handed down from generation to generation. They still exist. We've been very fortunate that these 5 have great owners who have dedicated themselves to preserving these sites. And so that's the best preservation, is to have great owners who take care of the sites. And if every historic site had that, we wouldn't have a need for preservation. Next slide. Those 5 aren't the only ones eligible. We have a number of properties that could be eligible to be put on the National Register. that's done by the owners themselves. They make an application and put themselves on. So this is the William Lewis house down on Goshen Road. The Lewis family were the original settlers of Newtown Square. One of them lived in this house, the original portion of it, and added on over generations. It's significant for that. And it's also significant that when Washington was at Valley Forge, he had spies throughout the countryside keeping an eye on the British. One of them, Major John Clark, lived here, and this was his base for his operations as he kept check on the British. That's a pretty significant national connection. So this could be on the National Register if the owners wanted it to be. Next slide. Newtown was settled by Quakers, by English and Welsh Quakers. And the first public building they built was this one. It was much smaller in 1711, but then they had they modernized it in 1791 to expand it because Quakers were booming back in the 18th century. Not so much today, although you can see in the bottom picture, that's 2007. There are still Quakers in Newtown, including the guy in the middle with the hat, that's me. It's a building that has seen 300 years of Newtown's history and is something we think worth preserving. Next. When I talked about those other towns, a lot of towns grew up around a town center, so they have a core of historic buildings in one place. We don't really have that. But we have a pretty high concentration of historic sites on North 252. If you look at this, that line up from Westchester Pike, that's Newtown, that's Route 252 heading out to Paoli. And so as you can see, they're starting right in the downtown with that old Horace Lewis house. Then you have the Friends Meeting, and the house across the street was a Lewis house, and the Square Tavern and the Baptist Cemetery, and a host of others all the way down to Ray Giuliani's house at St. David's Road. So that in itself is worth preserving. We don't have but we don't have really a town downtown. We have what's called scattered sites. And so the ordinance is a scattered site ordinance, which looks more at the individual places than the concentration of them. Next one. So here are all of our scattered sites that we think worthy of some level of protection. There's over 100. As you can see, they cover all of Newtown Township. And as I said, right now, Newtown is one of the best preserved communities in the western suburbs. Upper Darby doesn't have this. Marple doesn't have it to a large degree. Springfield doesn't have it. We have it still. Still is the key word. Okay. So how do we preserve all those things? We have these National Register sites, but the National Register just confers status. It confers no legal protection. BPG could take the Square Tavern and tear it down and put a Starbucks there, and you would have no say in the matter because the National Register doesn't give any legal status. In Pennsylvania, the high state authority for preservation is the Pennsylvania Museum Commission. They keep a list of historic sites throughout the state, but they can give you no legal protection. There's no legal protection at the state level. The Pennsylvania Constitution talks about the right of the people to have clean air, pure water, historic and aesthetic values. So they specifically recognize that, but it doesn't give any benefit. It just says that people have the right if they ask for it. The Newtown Comprehensive Plan, has a thoughtful look, and one of its goals is to protect the township's historic buildings. But the way to do that is not to put it in the township plan. You have to have a local preservation ordinance. So that's what we're presenting to you tonight is a local preservation ordinance. It's the only place where municipal planners in Pennsylvania, at least, can protect historic resources is locally. What the ordinance does, this is a quick summary. It encourages adaptive reuse. This is one of the key things. We try to write, we recognize that we're saying preservation is a value to the whole community. It makes the whole community more appealing. But the burden of doing that rests on these owners. And so the idea is to try to give them additional rights that because they are agreeing to preserve their place. So part of that is additional uses. And not everyone needs this. We're talking about the ones that just, sometimes people grow old in their house. The children have fled the nest, you know, it could be a widow living alone. She wants to hold on to the place, but she doesn't have the income. If she could use it as a bed and breakfast, something like that, it generates an income stream for one of these. There's an old house across from Culverton School, and it has an old garage in the back, or barn. And it's seen better days, but the owner of that house came to the, I forget if it was the zoning board, and with a really nice plan to renovate that and turn it into a one-bed, an apartment. And we appeared on behalf of that owner and said, this is exactly what preservation should be. It's allowing the owner to make an economic use. He's going to fix the thing, keep it up, and then he's going to get income from it, because we recognize you can't do it in a vacuum. You can't just seal off a building and not demolish it and say that's preservation. It is preservation, but it's not good preservation. So we want the township to be able to use this ordinance as a tool in the planning toolbox, rather than as a club to beat up the historic homeowners. The next point is, and the main point, we want to discourage demolition. It's a hard sell when an owner says it's my property, you know, I can do what I want with it. The ordinance tries to put speed bumps in the road, and ultimately gives you, as the supervisors, the right to say no under the right circumstances. An owner that doesn't want to file a demolition permit will just not repair the roof and let nature take its course, and that is called demolition by neglect. We've had that happen, not always intentionally, but so it gives you the tool to try to do something about that, because it's just another form of demolition. And if you're going to cover the whole range of protection, that's the back door to demolish a place, is just to not take care of it until it's a shambles, and then they come before you and say the place is a shambles, I got to tear it down. And then oversight over certain exterior alterations. This is it's the view from the street. What we value is the appearance of this place from the street. And I mean, we value more than that, but we can't go inside a house. We don't want to go around to the back and forbid them from adding an addition or a hot tub, or, you know, it's not about that. It's really trying to preserve the original appearance from the street. So this is the most contentious one, but it only applies to significant alterations that require a building permit. It doesn't require it for paint and things like that. But you can alter something out of existence. You know, there are across from Gentili's is what we call the old brick school, but you haven't seen bricks in the schoolhouse in 60 years. It was covered over with 60s renovations, and so hidden inside is the old brick school, but that's not good preservation for us. And another partial one in Tecca, there is a really cool dining room in the center of Tecca, and that is one of the oldest houses in Newtown. And but you don't know because it's completely covered with the, the restaurant that was built around it. And yet the beating heart of the thing is preserved. So that just reflects the fact that sometimes you need to make compromises to save things. Professional input from the Historic Commission. This creates a 7-member Historic Commission. It requires, I think, an architect and a realtor and an attorney and other people who value history. And the idea is they bring a knowledge of history and preservation to township decision making. And for me, one area where this could have been wonderful was at the Square Tavern. When it existed before the development, there was a tree line there that hid it from the rest of the parcel. And if we could have preserved that tree line and then just punched the walking trail through it, you would have been able to walk from the 21st century and all the new development into the original Tavern Green as it looked at the time of when Washington and his troops were pumping water there at the old pump. But instead, the tree line was destroyed. The buildings were built right up to the property line. They tower over this tavern. Aesthetically, from a preservation perspective, it's a mess. If you had the tools in your toolbox and perhaps a historical commission to point that out to you in your decision making, you could have provided for that. Now we have to wait for those trees to grow for the next 100 years. So that's a value to the commission. The ordinance also provides for a preservation fund. It's not going to be funded by the township, but it would be by donations, and we haven't fully figured that out. But the idea would be if there are owners of historic sites that need funds, it would be wonderful to have a fund that we could make either loans or grants to help them do what they need to do. And finally, it has a limited effect on most people. I live in a historic home in Marple. Marple has had a preservation ordinance. I've been there since 1998. The burden weighs very lightly on me. I've stuccoed, I've painted, I've added a patio. I've never been bothered by them because they're really worried that I'm going to, the only thing they're worried about is I'm going to demolish it. So effectively, for most owners that buy historic homes because they love them, they're going to take care of them. They're not going to have any interplay with this thing. It really is aimed at substantial alterations and demolition. So next. This is the paper mill house as we found it back in the early 70s. And after the bicentennial, that got people interested in preserving what we have. But this place was a wreck. Jan Elston walked in there and she said, when I walked into the first floor, I could look up and see the sky and I could look down and see the basement. Yet through the cooperation with the Harrison family and the township and the Historical Society, this is now a National Register site and a museum of local history. We have our students come in there every year, except for COVID, to teach them about our local history. It's a great community resource. And but it was, at the time this picture was taken, it was headed towards demolition. So it's just the final example of what can be done. That's what I have, and I'd like to, if Cathy Cavalier is available, she would like to tell you about the efforts we made to reach out to the owners and let them know about this and answer their questions and take their comments and be guided accordingly. So,
We would be happy to hear from Cathy briefly, so.
okay. If you can add her.
Here she is.
Cathy is in twice. I don't know if she can hear me.
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah, that's an accident with my phone. Good evening. I will make this very brief. Through mid-February to the beginning of March, I sent out over 100 letters to all the homeowners on our list or property owners. I sent one email and that went to BPG Steve Spader. All the rest were through the post office. Several, I would say maybe 10 to 15 letters came back. And those I delivered personally, driving one afternoon, finding all the homes. And I think several buildings were not there, but all the letters eventually got delivered. Responses in the letter, I think I have a copy of that letter. You do. I sent that in to Suzanne. So they were offered the ability to email me, call me by phone, go to our website where they could view the ordinance and view the map. And I set up 3 meetings at the Square Tavern. I had approximately 4 homeowners attend the meetings. I had 5 that emailed me, and I had 3 that called me on the phone. All their issues and their concerns were settled. And they were very supportive. Many just wanted to know how to get plaques. They had questions. Most people had not read the ordinance, so I had to direct them. They had a lot of questions before reading it, but they were overwhelmingly supportive. I received no objections, and I'll include that I did not receive an objection from BPG because I was never personally written with any objection, and I had sent the email March 10th. And to this day, I never received an email. So in that regard, overwhelming response. I also have 200 signatures. I could have had more from local residents that we received at the tavern over the past year and a half. Overwhelming support for an ordinance. And if you have any questions, that's pretty much it on my, it was a very successful, I felt.
Thank you, Kathy. I think you did a great job with the public outreach, and I personally got a copy of your letter. It sat there for a couple months at the railroad station, but finally we got it. So happy to have received it. And I think you did a great job, you and the Historical Commission and Doug yourself, in presenting this and getting us to an ordinance that I think we can all embrace. I want to remind everyone that the vote this evening is simply on advertising the ordinance. We're not approving the ordinance tonight. We're simply approving the advertisement of the ordinance. Any board members have any questions for Doug or Kathy on this particular ordinance or items or anything they presented?
Hey, John, Ed, I don't have any questions, but I think maybe I'd like to suggest that we move item 17.1 up at this point in time to put it together with the presentation.
I was getting there, Ed. That was the idea. I just want to see if we had any questions or discussion items first. But yes, my intention would be to take care of this now and get it done with, if that's what the board's
Right.
is.
When you're ready, I have a motion.
All right.
The only thing that I wanted to say is to thank Cathy Cavalier for reaching out to myself and Supervisor Robert Slycap over the last couple of months, working with the Historical Society on getting this ordinance to where it is today, and also with Cathy and her team of working with the individual residents, of having those residents who's had concerns that contacted the Historical Society in an appropriate amount of time to make revisions to the ordinance, to quell the fears and the misconceptions and misinformation out there. I believe that they've done an exceptionally good job of communicating that to those property owners that'll be impacted. I also think that this is a huge win. I think Doug's 2 slides that he did were great. One outlining, what a National Register does and doesn't do, and how really the only control we have here in Newtown Township is from a local preservation ordinance. I also think that his slide where it showed the 7 facts of what it does and what it doesn't do is extremely helpful. So this is a good win for the township. And, I know Doug kind of lifted this 17 years ago. And so I hope that this time we get it through.
Any other comments from the board on this item? All right, Mr. Partridge, you have a motion. You want to go ahead with that?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve the advertisement of ordinance 2021-03, Newtown Township Historic Ordinance, as was reviewed by the township and ready for advertisement.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Motion is made by Supervisor Partridge, seconded by Supervisor Altieri to approve the advertisement of ordinance 2021-03, which is the Newtown Township Historic Ordinance. Before we vote, again, this is just the advertisement. We're not approving the ordinance. Once the advertisement period is completed, we will have a public hearing, if you will, on the approval of the ordinance.
I think Mr. Sikora wants to say something.
Go ahead, Mr. Sikora.
If I may, I would just request that the motion be amended. The way the process works, there's two different ways these historic preservation ordinances work. One is where you have like a little district. One is where you have essentially just an amendment to your zoning. I don't know if I'm making feedback or something. One is like this one, which is kind of historic resources spread out through the whole town, not in a little district. So it's an amendment essentially to your zoning code. And in fact, there's provisions in here about conditional use applications for certain uses, which kind of make it even more so a zoning issue. So the way our ordinance works for zoning amendments is you actually, when you advertise it, you actually have to set a date that we're going to advertise for. And what would happen is we would advertise that here, a summary of this ordinance in the newspaper between 30 for 2 successive weeks, between 30 and 7 days of the actual hearing. Also, because this is under the municipality's planning code, it's a planning type event. This would go to the planning commission, I believe, and also the Delaware County Planning Department for their comment. Assuming that there's no significant changes or from any recommendations from those agencies that you want to consider, you would then put it on that pre-scheduled hearing date. If they made changes or there was public input at those meetings that would cause you to want to make changes, you'd re-advertise it at that time. So my request would be you set a hearing date with this motion so that's what we're going to advertise for. You would have a public hearing on that date. It's not an evidentiary hearing like adversarial. It's just a public input hearing. And then you would actually consider it for adoption after that. So my suggestion would be to make that, maybe 60 days out, and we will target our advertising to meet that date.
Okay, all right. I'll suggest a date, 60 days out. I guess April, May, June, first meeting in June. What anybody have the date? Steve?
June 14th.
Yeah, June 14th, Flag Day.
June 14th. Okay, so I'll amend my motion to advertise the approval of the ordinance, approve advertising the ordinance, and setting a date of June 14th, 2021 for a public hearing on the ordinance.
Mr. Altieri, you're still good with your second?
I am still good with my second, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Mr. Sikora, does that meet our legal requirements? Is making sure we get this all done properly?
I believe so, sir.
Thank you. Okay, ordinances yes, the motion was made and seconded, made by Supervisor Partridge, seconded by Supervisor Altieri to approve the advertisement of ordinance 2021-03, the Newtown Township Historic Ordinance, setting a hearing date for Monday, June 14th, 2021. Any further questions or discussions on the motion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Fantastic. We're moving forward. I'm so happy to do this to make sure that we are getting this advanced, and hopefully we'll get this done soon. So again, to echo Mr. Altieri's comments, big thank you to our Historic Society and Ms. Cavalier and there goes my memory again, Mr. Humes, on their extraordinary work on putting this together. And let's see if we can get this done. As part of the hearing, of course, everyone will have a chance to make comments and so forth. So, all right, that takes care of that item and item 17.1. So that's just for the questions. We are going to move ahead to item 10 reports. First up is a report from our Township Engineer, Eileen Nelson, regarding the stop sign at Roberts and Sugar Maple.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the March 22nd meeting, there was a request for Chief and I to look at this intersection. It is very similar to the one that we last reviewed at Crum Creek and Partridge in its configuration of a T intersection. But the main difference is that the one leg is already stop controlled. And while no traffic counts were taken, Chief did investigate and found that there were no accident reports dating back to 2001 and possibly beyond, but that was where he stopped his search. And we determined there are no sight distance issues. If I recall correctly, the complaint actually came more related to speeding in the area, and stop signs are really not supposed to be used for for speed control. So the report that I put together recommends that if the residents want to pursue the traffic calming policy, that would potentially address the speeding concerns that they have there, but stop sign is not recommended.
Okay. Any questions, comments for our engineer?
I guess it's actually more for the township manager, but with the purchase of those portable speed humps, are we going to be deferring residents from going through the traffic calming policy and requesting that these portable speed humps be installed? How do you want us to handle that? And I'm asking because I was the one who received the request for this stop sign. So I just want to know what is going to be the most beneficial and for this resident.
So I think you said, are we referring residents to the traffic calming? Is that
Yeah.
correct?
What do you prefer? Do you prefer? Sorry, I was pretty far away from the screen. Now that we have purchased the portable speed humps, is the township going to? Does the township have a preference that we tell residents to request a portable speed hump, or do you still want us to have them go through the traffic calming policy?
I think that it's so. The challenge would be, we purchased 4 speed tables. My guess is in most cases, we will use at least 2 to 4 to do a particular area. And so I think we need to set a priority based on having traffic calming requests. I mean, we'll do what the board asks us to do, but I think that the staff would say, as we get a traffic calming request, it would go through that process. So for example, we already have 3 areas that we've been requested for traffic calming requests that have kind of started through the process. One of which this board has said we were going to kind of skip the full thing because it was Sawmill Road. And as heavy as that was, we were going to start there. And so that'll probably be the first place that the traffic tables will be installed. And typically, in order for us to determine, have we seen a benefit, they'll probably be there for 30 days at least. And so it just kind of expectations. I want to make sure we're all on the same page.
Okay. So have them go towards the traffic calming policy.
I think that's best because that way the board can set priority.
Sounds good. Thank you.
I thought we bought enough speed tables to do 2 areas at one time, Steve.
Well, we bought 4 and you will use at least 2 in an area to make it work. So that would be 2 areas, but something like we looked at Sawmill as one of those sections. As long as that road is, we would probably end up using at least 3 of the 4, if not all 4 on Sawmill to make it work.
Okay.
I mean, the chief and engineer and George and myself have talked about Sawmill on multiple occasions. That area, there's such a long straightaway when you first get on there, and then there's another spot a little bit further down that is an area that we have to look at and see where we know where chief has done, where the police have done some speed timing. We know there's multiple areas on that road.
If Sawmill's first on our list, then maybe we got to get them deployed ASAP then. I don't know what our schedule is currently, but if we can get them out there and get them deployed, I think that's what we need to do.
Yeah, they're supposed to be in the next couple of weeks, is what I'm hearing. And that was the plan.
Okay. Any other questions on this issue? All right, moving on to item 10.2, report from our township manager. Mr. Nish, you're up.
Yes, I have several different things on our list, and I'll try to go through them as quickly as possible. The project out on Route 3, that Westchester Pike is continuing. They are getting ready in the next couple weeks. I believe it's the week of April 18th to start the repaving part of that project. And they intend to do that at night. So I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware. They're hoping to do that to eliminate some of the congestion problems that they've been having for some of the other work and getting that done. After they're done, huh?
Thanks.
I know. When they asked me that or told me that, I thought, I know one person that'll be very excited to hear that.
Oh yeah. Woo!
So
And
we
that's
are
2
looking.
weeks, right? That'll be 2 weeks.
Excuse me?
They expect to take 2 weeks to do that at night? Is that what it is?
It's to begin in 2 weeks.
Oh.
I'm not 100% sure exactly how long it's going to take. I think it'll probably be at least 2 weeks to do that much, maybe a little longer, depending on.
I think they'll get it done quicker than that. I just think they need to have the extra time in case due to weather and other unforeseen things like that. So
yeah.
Yeah, they expect to be wrapped up completely within 2 weeks for the whole project. So the milling and paving should be less than that.
yeah, their schedule said May 4th. So we are getting dangerously close to that.
Yeah. All right. The next thing is our public works team is intending on tackling 2 different areas on Sawmill to do some pretty heavy patching beginning in May 3rd. Hopefully at that point we'll have most of our workers back who are taking vacations right now and those kind of things. And so they're going to try to tackle Sawmill up by 252 and also down near Timber Lane to Green Country Drive. If you've been on that road, you'll know that those 2 areas are significant and challenged. They're also looking at Earl's Lane near Green Country Village as being the areas that they're going to try to tackle right now. They're going to continue to cold patch during this time and get things to kind of hold off, but that's when they're going to start the next area. That we're also looking at the potential of a very small project, depending on how much money is fully left over from the 2020 plan. We haven't closed that project out yet where we did the repaving. We hope to be able to do that in the next couple months, and we may try to take some of the dollars that are left over from last year's borrowing and try to do a very small project and do that. So that's part of that. One of the things that I know would be of interest to a lot of folks, even though it's not in the township, Darby Paoli Road Bridge is scheduled to for sure be open by the beginning of May. It may be even sooner. That will help particularly on all the traffic that has been on Sawmill, and that will help hopefully reduce some of that traffic, because that has been, a lot of people have been using that as the detour, even though that was not the official detour. So just to let you know that. Concert in the Park coming up on June 12th. We are going to try to do that and spread people out and do those things. We're talking about expanding the stage for the band, and then also going through and marking out areas where people can sit in groups of 4 and all be outside and still separate and do all of those things, assuming that things are kind of continuing as they are right now. The one thing we are also watching, we're having a major goose problem at the park right now, and it's kind of a mess over there. So we're trying to figure out how to help encourage them to find another place to land and doing that. So you may be hearing us talk about some of those things in the next couple months. Also, you've asked us about Westchester Pike School Zone. We've been working with Signal Service. The LED flashers were installed today. The mast arm signage and back plates will be installed tomorrow. So that's moving forward. There's also some additional work that the Public Works Department intends on doing related to replacing all the ground posts, all the signs that are mounted in the ground. And so that'll be being done as well. So just know that's coming. I think we've been talking, and I know we've been talking, but I know you're aware of the basketball court painting. We've ran into a little snag that was to be done actually, I believe, in the month of May. The school is concerned about COVID protocol for the students to be over here doing the painting. And so we are, they're anticipating that it might be done maybe if the students wish to do it off hours in the summer or potentially in the fall. So we're kind of waiting on that and following that. So if it comes up, anybody has questions, that's where we are with that. And it has to just do, obviously, the schools keeping their priority of keeping their COVID policies in place, and for them to be together and painting was a challenge. So they're having us kind of wait on that. But they are moving in that way. One of the things that's coming up is Children's Mental Health Week. In the past that you have done that, I did put in your packet for you to look at that. If you're okay, unless there's an objection, we'll put that on the agenda for your next meeting for you to recognize that. Another thing, and we posted on the website, and there's also some information in our vestibule out at the front of the building, and the vestibules down towards the police entrance. When I say this, we put some information out. The county is doing emergency rental insurance assistance program. If I'm not saying that right, I'm going to say it again. So the county is doing an emergency rental assistance program for anybody that's had trouble paying their rent. If we have anybody in any of our apartments, if you know of anybody living in any of our apartments, or even who are renting houses in town who might meet the qualifications that are required, you have to be 80% of the average home income or less to be able to get that. I believe if you have 3 family members, that number is like 69,600. So there might be people in our town that would have that issue, and they can look on the information on our website. It's also on the county website, and they really are looking for folks to apply for this. There's a fair amount of dollars, stimulus dollars, that have been set for this. And so if anyone's interested, I would encourage them to do so. Just so everyone knows, the fire truck is actually going to be moving this way this week. It's finishing up on the at the place where it was built. It still has probably about another month and a couple of weeks worth of work to be done once it gets here, putting in for all of the equipment to be mounted in the truck. They're going to line all that out, get it all ready, and then they will take it down to Maryland, where there's a company that's going to put all of the hangars and all of that kind of stuff in for us. They found a place that will do it much cheaper than the contract that we originally had agreed to, or that we were thinking that we were going on. And so just know that probably about the beginning to the second week in June, they're hoping to have the fire truck here and be ready to go. Well, they have to do training on it. Everybody's got to be certified on the new fire truck, but they'll start that process, and hopefully it won't be long before that truck's running for the township. The last thing I have for you all is related to the Sustainable PA/Newtown, and we have that down further under new business, and I will talk more about that at that time.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Neese? Seeing none, hearing none, we will go on. Thank you, Mr. Neese. We have 8 fund transfers. I'm going to hopefully read all these, and then we can just take them in one motion. Since they're not really budget changes, they're just transferring money from one pot to the other, if you will. So I will read them, and someone else will offer a motion. That's great. This is 11-1 through 11-8. 11-1, consider approving the request to transfer $106,000 from the general fund to the capital fund. The money represents money that was budgeted in the 2021 budget to be transferred to the capital fund for the replacement of 2 police vehicles. 11.2, consider approving the request to transfer $25,000 from the general fund to the capital fund. This money represents money that was budgeted in the 2021 budget to be transferred to the capital fund for the Public Works Replacement Program. 11.3, consider approving the request to transfer $10,000 from the general fund to the capital fund. The money represents money that was budgeted in the 2021 budget to be transferred to the capital fund for the sign replacement program. 11.4, considering approving the request to transfer $6,250 from the general fund to the capital fund. This money represents money that was budgeted in the 2021 budget to be transferred to the capital fund for battery backups for the traffic signals. Item 11.5, considering approving a request to transfer $14,000 from the general fund to the capital fund. This money represents money that was budgeted in the 2021 budget to be transferred to the capital fund for the school signal repair, restoration, replacement. 11.6, consider approving the request to transfer $300,000 from the general fund to the capital fund. This money represents money that was budgeted in the 2021 budget to be transferred to capital fund for the road program. 11.7, consider approving the request to transfer $11,584 from the general fund to the streetlight fund. This money represents money that was budgeted in the 2021 budget to be transferred to the streetlight fund for operations. And finally, 11.8, consider approving the request to transfer $3,306 or $308.06 from the general fund to the capital fund. This money represents money that was budgeted in the 2021 budget to be transferred to the capital fund to repay the interfund loan agreement approved September 11th, 2017 for the street light LED project. Those are our fund transfers. Would anybody like to offer a motion on all 8 of those?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made by Supervisor Russo, seconded by Supervisor Partridge to approve items 11.1 through 11.8. Any questions or discussions on the motion or any of those line items? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next on the agenda, we have 2 budget adjustments. Since they're budget adjustments, we'll take them separately. Item 12.1, consider approving budget increase 2021-01, increasing the general fund budget as follows. Increasing the revenue account use of fund balance by $24,121, increasing the revenue account for insurance refunds by $955, and increasing the revenue account sweeper repairs to $25,076. The increase will come from the use of fund balance and the insurance reimbursement due to the street sweeper being involved in the accident in 2020. Please note that $24,121 was collected in 2020 from the insurance reimbursements that have been rolled into the 2021 fund balance.
So moved for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made by Supervisor Partridge, seconded by Supervisor Roberts Lightcap to approve item 12.1 as read. Any questions or discussions on that motion?
I think Mr. Neese has something to say.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Neese.
Mr. Chair,
Can you move
number-
down?
The third dot down. I'm sorry. Yes, I will move it down. Sorry.
Thank you.
The third bullet point down says it's a revenue account. It's actually an expense account on that one. When you go to do the next one, it's also an expense account, not a revenue account.
Okay, I'll adjust my motion to take those changes.
Second.
Okay. Motion was made by Supervisor Partridge, second by Supervisor Roberts Lightcap to approve item 12.1 with the adjustments as noted by Mr. Neese. Any further questions on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 12.2, consider approving budget increase 2021-02, increasing the general fund budget as follows. Increasing revenue account for the use of fund balance by $13,916 and increasing the expense account mowing contract by $13,916. This increase will come from the use of fund balance due to the mowing contract bid accepted at the 3/22/21 Board of Supervisors meeting coming in higher than originally budgeted. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made by Supervisor Altieri, seconded by Supervisor Roberts Lightcap to approve item 12.2 as read. Any further questions or discussions on the motion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next, under payments, we have one item. Consider approving the $95,000, 760.97 payment to CM3 as the final payment for work associated with the budget building renovation. Yes, Mr. Neese.
If we can make this a contingent on Andy signing off, I found out late this afternoon, Andy had not signed off yet.
Is it easier just to pull it off the agenda and table it till next meeting?
He may sign off after he does his inspection, and if you've approved, fine. If not, I mean, we can do it either way, but I just found out about it this afternoon.
Pull it off.
Pull it off,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'd pull it off.
Mr. Neese, we'd like to table item 13.1.
No problem.
All right, moving on. Bills, item 14.1. I had the opportunity before this evening's meeting to review the checks on Register A dated today, April 12, 2021, in the amount of $320,442.70. And is my motion that we approve that. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion was made by myself, seconded by Supervisor Partridge to approve item 14.1. Any further questions or discussion? Mr. Neese, yes.
I'm sorry, because you pulled off the one before, we actually need to reduce that number to $224,681.73.
Okay, I'm checking my list right now just to check your math, and I think you're right. Of course you're right. Okay, so what's that number again?
It's $681.73.
Okay. Well, that is my motion at that amount. Is the
Second.
All right, good. All those in favor of the motion with the correction as read by Mr. Neese, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next, we have two developer releases. Since they're different developers, we'll take them one at a time. Before I get started, Mr. Neese, are there any changes to these?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, but no, I don't. Well, I would have to defer to our engineer if there are.
Item 15.1, consider approving the full release of the financial security bond for Chase Bank release as confirmed by the Township Engineer.
So moved for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made by Supervisor Partridge, seconded by Supervisor Altieri to approve item 15.1. Is there any further questions or discussions on this item? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 15.2, consider approving a release request number 1 from Hill Buick totaling $33,330 as recommended by the Township Engineer. The remaining balance is still $169,934.98.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made by Supervisor Altieri, seconded by Supervisor Russo to approve item 15.2. Any questions or discussions on this item? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Brings us to item 16. We have one item, 16.1. Consider approving the land development waiver request from the Aronimink Golf Club. I suppose there is somebody here in this list of participants from representing Aronimink. If you are, raise your hand. Have somebody raising their hand. That would be, Mark D'Amico. Mr. Neese, could you allow Mr. D'Amico to speak?
I believe I just did.
Okay,
Can you hear me?
we can. Please introduce yourself.
Great. Yes, good evening. My name is Mark D'Amico. I'm an attorney in media, but I'm here tonight actually as a member of Aronimink Golf Club. Specifically, I'm the secretary of the club.
Okay.
So Aronimink, go back a year, COVID started. Aronimink has been working on plans for a couple years now to do improvements, some significant improvements to the interior of the club, and also to do some work on the outside, which would include renovating completely the golf patio. When COVID hit, the idea was to try to expedite a small outdoor kitchen that's adjacent on the existing, sitting on top of the existing golf patio. As part of that, we hired a contractor to do a small expansion of the flagstone patio. And later on, we submitted plans. Clark Turnkey Solutions submitted plans to the township, which were reviewed by Mr. Rezick. We did that back in September, but at the time he noted that there had been no permit obtained for the expansion of the flagstone patio. So we then went about with Chester Valley Engineers, our civil engineer, to file a grading permit. There was then some, and I was involved in none of these discussions, by the way. I was just sort of brought in over the last couple of weeks here. Long story short, there was then a suggestion that the flagstone patio would require land development approval. I reached out to Eileen Nelson and Mr. Rezick about a month ago. We had a very nice, productive conversation. When I explained that this was just a small piece of a larger puzzle, the suggestion was that we should request a waiver of land development. And if the board was able to consider that, then Mr. Rezick would be able to review the application, the building permit application that we made back in September for the small kitchen expansion. And we did submit, we submitted plans, but we submitted with a letter requesting the waiver, a schematic of where that kitchen, outdoor kitchen equipment would be located. I believe Mr. Rezick actually told me when we were on the phone that he had reviewed the plans, had a couple questions, but they were basically ready to go. And so the idea is we're hoping to get the outdoor kitchen constructed in the next couple of months so that we can use it for the 2021 season. The idea being to try to keep as much dining outdoors as possible. And again, the golf patio, if you've been there, is it's a large area. This is just a small part of it, but the entire area is going to be renovated. That is going to require obviously a full land development submission. Club is also considering, and part of that application is likely to be a golf learning center, which would be basically a small indoor hitting facility that will be located out on the range. The club is also considering whether to renovate the pool in place or to move it. So we've hired a very reputable architect called Voight & McIntosh. They've officially been engaged by the club. They're working with a contracting consultant and a team of people at Aronimink on those plans right now. Significant interior alterations will be part of that plan as well. So long story short, that's what we're trying to do. When we were talking about this, it was suggested that because this is such a minor expansion that we could delay the land development approval, and that would obviously show the flagstone patio and the kitchen at that time. There's going to be significant stormwater improvements that are going to be done at that time. I'll let Township Engineer speak for herself, but I think her suggestion was that under the circumstances, that would be appropriate.
All right, let me throw out a couple questions here to put some context on it, and either you or Eileen, I guess, can fill in the blanks. Number one, this is not related to any hosting of any events. This is simply a change or a request because of COVID.
That is correct, and it did happen to dovetail. We had before we hired this architect, we have had a design consultant who actually is an architect, but they specialize in renovations for clubhouses, and they have a pretty impressive resume. We engaged them a couple years ago. The plans that they have to renovate the golf patio just happened to have this kitchen equipment on there, and we thought when COVID hit, look, we're not ready to do this big patio renovation, but if we can get the kitchen equipment on here now, we won't have to tear it down later. It'll be consistent with that, and we can try to get some people outside of the clubhouse.
Are we
It's nothing to do with the tournament.
Are we putting in any new impervious areas?
Well, the kitchen equipment will be located on the existing flagstone patio right up against the clubhouse. We did put in a small addition to the flagstone patio about 6-8 months ago. And we did that, unfortunately, without a permit. And I certainly apologize. I was not involved. But for whatever reason, the club did not get a permit. So that's what got this started.
What is the size of this small addition? Do you know the square footage?
It is 1,228 square feet. So to give you an idea of perspective, the club is 300 acres. So that's a 1/100th of 1% increase in impervious coverage, which is about the same as putting 2 flagstone pavers in a 1 acre property.
I think you attorneys would call that de minimis, correct?
It's quite de minimis, and it's nowhere near hundreds of feet from any adjacent property owner. It drains onto the golf course, so it's not causing a stormwater problem.
Well, that was my next question, what drainage is, and you're self-contained within the golf course. It's not going on to any adjacent properties or anything like that.
It's headed down towards the golf course and 100 acres of grassed area essentially.
Before we move on to our engineer, does any other board members have any questions for Mr. D'Amico?
No, I'm waiting to hear from Miss Nelson.
Eileen, you're up.
We did receive, after the construction, a plan for addressing stormwater after the fact. And I believe that this was discovered by Mr. Retchik during his work for the tournament. That was where this all started. And although the plan was submitted for a permit and was reviewed for installation of a seepage bed, the underlying comment that Andy originally conveyed to the club was that land development was needed for this. And the evolution after Mark got involved was to find out how we could proceed. And one of the options, as I indicated, was to come before the board and request a waiver, knowing that there was a larger project looming.
Eileen, this larger project, how big is this larger project? Do we know?
From what Mark has described for me, it's not completely set in stone, but the facility, Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, would be about a 7,000 or 8,000 square foot building.
The Golf Learning Center is going to be somewhere in that neighborhood. So that'll be a large building down by the golf patio. I mean, it's by the driving range. The plan that you're showing right there, the golf patio is on the lower left-hand side of the club there, below the dotted box. So that whole area is going to be reconstructed. In particular, there's an area out towards the golf course. It's a large wooden deck. The concept would be to remove the deck and lower it and create essentially a terraced flagstone patio, which would basically enable people to have a better view of the golf course. Right now, the deck sticks straight out. So if you're back towards the club, you're looking at the deck and you can't see the grade falls away and you can't see it because the deck's there. So it'll be a significant, meaning, $1 million plus project just to do the golf patio. So even though it might not be bigger in footprint, it'll be renovated and a lot more impervious coverage. So at that point, that would be a significant part of the land development application, as well as the golf learning center. And as I mentioned, also likely to be included in that project would be the pool, either expanding the pool in its current location or possibly moving it down towards the tennis courts, which is basically between where the pool is now and the tennis bubble, if you will, down toward as you get towards St. David's Road. So it's
Eileen,
a
is there a way
significant project.
Eileen, is there a way to just, if we do grant a waiver, just keep with the stipulation that once this other project comes in, that they have to account for this too? If this is not getting rebuilt and is in the area of the addition is outside this new patio, where he's just adding the patio out on top of something else?
What I was hoping was, unless the plan is to completely remove what they've just put in, I was going to suggest that they do comply with the stormwater measures that they've proposed for the permit application in the granting of the waiver.
Okay,
for
what
land
are those
development.
stormwater measurements? Measures? Can you describe what they are?
They've just below the flagstone patio that was put in, they've got a collection system and an infiltration bed proposed.
Is
And
Okay. Is
that,
that something?
that
Is
I
that
think
something
they should
small
put
in
in.
size? I mean, is it just going to be self-sufficient, or is it going to connect to a larger system?
No, it should be standalone and infiltrate into the ground right where it is. That's
Okay.
okay.
And that's already in place?
It's not in place. It is at a stage where it could be, the permit could be issued. We stopped everything when we started discussing the land development application and or waiver.
By my rudimentary math, we're talking about, I don't know, 0.3 cubic feet per second, if I'm not mistaken, roughly around there, correct?
I don't have those numbers in front of me right now, but
Fairly small.
the bed was of decent size because it has to be based on infiltration rates at that location. And typically in the design of it, and I know this was one of the comments, you've got to have a factor of safety in that infiltration rate. So the beds themselves can be of decent size, and this one in particular is.
And this is at the, I'll call it the edge of the club that goes toward the entire, like that valley there that takes you back up to 11 and things like that, if I'm not mistaken.
The plan that's up shows the box of where the flagstone patio expansion was.
Yeah, all right. Any other questions, members of the board, on this? Ladies and gentlemen, do you have a pleasure one way or the other?
So I'm usually not a fan of granting waivers. I think I've stated that time and time before, but there's two things that are essentially running alongside here. It's one, we're speaking of 1,200 square feet or 1,600 square feet in a 300-acre property. And the other one, which is the more controlling factor, quite frankly, is the fact that they have all these potential improvements or proposed improvements that'll be coming forward. I walked that area with their assistant general manager, Mr. Greg Alonso, about a week, 2 weeks ago. And based off of this meeting, with what Eileen said, and then what Mr. D'Amico said, I mean, I have no problem with moving forward with granting the waiver.
Would you like to offer a motion in that respect, or is that a motion?
Well,
Good. If they're, you want me to?
well,
do the
Leonard, I
motion?
have no problem. I have no problem with what you said. I just think that we should put a time limit on it. If they
Yeah.
don't get this project going in say 6 months or 8 months or whatever the time may be, that they have to go ahead and put this bed in. That way, if they say, "Oh well, we decide not to do it because we don't want it," we changed our mind. I don't want to be sitting there giving somebody a waiver.
Okay. Mike, I'm going to let you make the motion because I agree with you, but I don't want to mess up how you want to phrase it.
Well, no, that's all I'm saying. That's the only caveat I had. Whatever, I just, Eileen, if it's the system, I don't know what you want to call it, the infiltration bed, is that what it's called?
Yes.
So I make the motion to give them the waiver based upon a time frame of 6 months to start the larger project. If not, they have to come back and put this infiltration bed in per the drawing they submitted to you and is on hold.
Mr. Altieri?
Second.
All right, motion was made by Mr. Russo, seconded by Supervisor Altieri to grant the waiver subject to the placement of a infiltration bed and or the restart of the overall project and submission of the application within the next 6 months. Mr. D'Amico, is that acceptable to you on behalf of the club?
That is, we were prepared to go ahead and put that in. So if we'll stand behind that. If it's not, if we don't have land development plans, we'll, in 6 months, we'll put it in. No problem.
Eileen, you're okay with that motion?
I am.
Fantastic. Any other questions on behalf of the board?
I actually have a comment. I just ask that they don't do any more work without coming in and getting a permit, no matter how large or how small. Just respect the fact that I know that they're large and it was a small project. You still have to get a permit. We just appreciate the respect. Mutual respect. That's all.
Well said.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other comments? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much, folks.
Thank you for your time. Much appreciated.
All right, moving on. We already took care of under new business. We took care of item 7.1. Let's discuss item 7.2. Consider approving the advertisement of the hearing for ordinance 2021-04, which is recognizing the fire code. Mr. Neese.
Sorry about that. Yes, so if you'll recall, we had talked last time, or I think it was maybe even 2 times ago, Leonard brought up the fact that in Andy's report was the recommendation for updating our code to state that we would follow and recognize the International Fire Code, I believe it is. And so that was what was brought before you. Ordinance has been put together. My understanding is the first step is for the township to have a hearing on that, and then for it to go before, I'm forgetting which organization at the state, but it has to go before the
review or something like that, yeah.
board of review, and then it comes back for final approval by the township, is my understanding.
So this is just advertisement though, right, Steve?
This is the first step of having the first hearing and then going through and having the board approve it contingent on that, and then it comes back. It's a 2-step process.
I'll make a motion for the advertisement of the hearing for ordinance 2021-04.
There's a second.
Second.
Motion was made by Supervisor Partridge, seconded by Supervisor Altieri to approve the advertisement for the hearing for ordinance 2021-04, recognizing the fire code. I'll add that I'm surprised that we weren't or never adopted the National Fire Code. It seems to be You know, it's like the building code, you adopt it and the state adopts it, but I know in this state, they didn't necessarily adopt that, so we have to do it, so that's fine. Any other comments on this motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 17.3, consider approving moving forward with the sustainability resolution. This one's been on our plate for a while. Mr. Neese.
So you had asked before we move forward to go back and for it to be discussed at the Environmental Advisory Commission, and they have. Coming out of that group, they are giving approval for us to move forward on this. And as such, we want to start the process. I'm recommending that we would probably call it Sustainable Newtown or Sustainable Newtown Square, depending if you want to differentiate enough between us being Newtown, Delaware County versus Newtown, Bucks County, because occasionally things get confused in that area. So we would look at doing that. I would make mention that your move tonight, moving forward with the historic ordinance and creating a historic commission, is actually one of the things that they suggest you do in sustainability. So I think we're moving in the right direction already. We as a staff would meet and go over everything and get a more detail. We've already started that approach of coming up with who would be responsible for what areas. Of moving forward, along with some of what committees that would be involved, what the role of the board would be with different pieces of it. But before we go any further, one of the next steps would be passing a resolution that basically says that you want to do this, but you wanted some feedback from the Environmental Advisory Commission first, and so the feedback that I'm bringing before you is that they had agreement with that and thought that this was a good move forward.
So what's the next step then? You come back to us with a draft ordinance of sorts and we vote and we take a motion to advertise it then?
It would be a resolution.
Okay.
It would not require advertising as I understand it. But before we do that, I just want to you had wanted some feedback before stating whether or not you want to really participate in this. We've got the feedback I think that you were looking for, is that the EAC definitely thinks it's a positive in the right direction, and they're supporting it. And so if you're willing for that and okay with that, the staff will work on putting together a resolution for your next meeting.
Any board member have any problem with that?
Yeah, I agree.
All right. We're good, Mr. Neese. Please move forward and get us something quickly.
We will work on that.
All right, item 7.4 is consider approving the 2020 DCED Municipal Audit and Financial Report. I know a copy was sent to everyone. Hopefully you've had a chance to review that. I'll entertain a motion on this item.
I ask a question real quick. Do we need to vote on that 17.3? Because we didn't do a vote on that.
I think it's just an acknowledgement that we want Steve to move forward.
That's it? Okay.
I think everybody said yes.
Yeah.
Do you want to vote?
No, I just, if Steve needs it for resolution purposes, then great. If not, then, the EAC gave us the thumbs up and we're giving the thumbs up to the township staff. So I think that's all that needs to be done.
Yeah, I think when you approve the resolution, that'll be your vote.
The only thing I ask is to make it sustainability Newtown Square. Don't do sustainability Newtown.
I think that's taken care of, Mr. Neese. You got there. That's one item off the table.
You're welcome.
All right, back to item 17.4, the 2020 DCED Municipal Audit and Financial Report. Would anybody like to offer a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the 2020 DCED Municipal Audit and Financial Report.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made by Supervisor Partridge, seconded by Supervisor Roberts Lightcap to approve item 17.4. Is there any questions on the motion or the actual audit itself?
If I could, Mr. Chairman, I would just make note that the next step will be that we will actually advertise as we're required to this week. I just wanted to let you know that we're doing the advertisement as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions? Hearing and seeing nothing. All those in favor of approving the audit, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 17.5, consider approving the advertising of the codes position. Mr. Neese.
Yes, for those that don't know, I know that the board has been notified that Cathy Spar, who is basically our codes administrative person, has accepted a position at another location or another place. And she's not announced where that is yet, but she will be leaving the township on the 9th. I believe it's the 19th, whatever next Friday is, or this Friday, I'm sorry. We are wanting to advertise for her position and replace that, and we're making that a priority.
Steve, a question before, John. Are you, at this point in time, are you going to advertise this with the same job duties that currently existed for Cathy?
We are going to advertise for certain, we want to advertise for the same things, a couple minor changes. And so that's why we want to take and make this a priority position to fill.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody like to offer a motion on this item?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made by Supervisor Robert Lightcap, seconded by Supervisor Russo to approve the advertisement of the codes position. Any further questions or discussions from members of the board? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 17.6, consider establishing the Finance Committee as an official township committee. Mr. Neese, anything you need to add to that?
I would just make note that we had originally set the Finance Committee up just kind of as an ad hoc type of committee, just to give some feedback to the staff. As we've gone on, it's become clear that it would be beneficial to the township if we had a Finance Committee that not only gave feedback to the staff, but also was maybe giving some more formal recommendations to the board over time. And so in order to do that, we believe that you would need a formal committee that would be a meeting in public and all of those kind of things, and had everything that people could follow and what's going on. And so that's the recommendation. When you get down into the resolution, it initially appoints the people that are currently serving as in that role. But also gives term to that. And we would have people be serving 5-year terms in that way. And then moving forward from there, as those terms are done, they would be appointed by the board just like any other committee.
Thank you, Mr. Neese.
And Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. I've been a part of the Finance Committee for the last 7 years almost. Or as long as Mr. Neese has been here, at least, maybe I think longer. But in any case, I think that this committee is important for information as well. So I think that that's why this is a good thing for us to establish this as a committee with regular meetings that the public can attend, because Mr. Neese has had all these budget workshops, which have been great, but participation has been kind of low in those workshops, but I think if there's a regular Finance Committee meeting, there may be more people interested and may attend those meetings on a regular basis.
Thank you. Thank you. Why don't we just go ahead with item 19.1 now? Supervisor Roberts Lightcap, would you like to read that resolution?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 2021-15, establishing the Newtown Township Finance Committee. Whereas the Board of Supervisors finds the need to establish the Finance Committee of Newtown Township, and whereas the committee shall consist of no fewer than 3 members and no more than 5 members to be appointed by the Board of Supervisors from time to time or at the annual reorganization meeting. And whereas members shall serve terms of 5 years unless otherwise determined by the Board of Supervisors. The supervisor shall annually appoint a chairman to serve at the pleasure of the supervisors. Whereas the 5 members shall consist of citizens who are trustworthy, of sound judgment, and do not have their own agenda. In addition, the committee shall consist of 2 elected auditors. Whereas also serving on the Finance Committee are up to 2 liaisons from the Board of Supervisors, the Township Manager, and Finance Director serving as ex officio members. Whereas the powers and duties of the committee shall be to oversee and provide guidance to the Board of Supervisors and to the township staff related to financial related matters. Whereas the committee shall hold monthly meetings open to the public in which records are kept and made public. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Supervisors establishes the Newtown Township Finance Committee and appoints the following citizens. And I apologize if I mispronounce anyone's name. Ed Hobbouts, serving 1 year of 5-year term expiring 12/31/2021. Larry Fisher, serving remaining 2 years of a 5-year term expiring 12/31/2022. Lisa Parcell, serving remaining 3 years of 5-year term expiring 12/31/2023. Alex Sukis, serving remaining 4 years of a 5-year term expiring 12/31/2024. Jim Lazzolano, serving 5 years of a 5-year term expiring 12/31/2025. Elected auditors, Sherry Smith, John Weaver. Board of Supervisor liaisons, Tina Roberts Lightcap, Leonard Altieri, ex officio member, Rich Lafayette, and Stephen Neese. Signed this day, the Board of Supervisors of Newtown Township, and that's my motion.
There a second?
Yeah, I'll second that. But I do have a question, Tina. So since we have to appoint a chairman, my suggestion would be to add that into the motion. I
Okay.
don't know who's officially, serving in that capacity in the unofficial finance committee that currently exists, but
I don't
is
know
there a
that we have one.
recommendation?
We don't.
Do we, Steve?
We do not.
So
Why do
Would you
we
have to elect
even want
one?
to why do we want to appoint someone?
Why don't they elect one themselves?
Yeah, that was what the
It-
question I was going to have.
well, I'm just following what the motion says.
No, I understand what you're saying, Ed, and it was one of the points I was going to bring up is just like all the other boards and commissions, unless there's a
Right.
justification, Steve, what do you?
The reason actually being is we followed what was in the environmental advisory commissions. And in both of these, it says that that the board appoints the chair.
Oh, Bruce Killen's in for a rude awakening. No, just kidding.
So if
So-
you,
Totally kidding. He's been doing a fantastic job. That was a bad joke.
so if you wish to take that out, we can take that out.
Why don't we go down? I mean, I'm open to either, but do we have a majority to take it out?
I would just take it out.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'd
I'd like
it's up to the committee to elect their own chairman.
I think so too. I'd like to adjust my motion, Mr. Chairman,
Okay,
to whereas members shall serve terms of 5 years unless otherwise determined by the Board of Supervisors, a chairman shall be appointed by the committee,
elected by the committee.
elected by the committee.
Okay,
And I'll second that.
all right, motion was made and seconded to approve resolution 2021-15, formally establishing the Newtown Township Finance Committee with the changes regarding the chairman. Any other discussion, questions on the motion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Well done, and thanks to those who have agreed to serve. We look forward to your input. All right. That takes us to old business. We have nothing listed. We took care of item 19. It takes us to additional business. We have nothing listed. Item 21 is board comment. Are there any board members that would like to offer any comment?
Yes, I would like to make comment. This past weekend, Wade Pollock, Chair of Parks and Rec, had a cleanup over that I was involved in over at Greer Park with Tina. Also, Sheila Feeney from the EAC was over there, and a ton of other volunteers. He said it's the best turnout he's had in a long time for this. And I just want to go kudos to him because we must have pulled out, Tina, myself, and Sheila must have pulled out like 5 bags of trash plus a bunch of other big stuff, tires and everything, at the beginning of Greer Park over by Pico. And there's a bunch of other volunteers. I think it was a great day and a great turnout. And I just want to say, I think Wade did a great job getting everybody out there.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you.
But, and also Marty Milligan ran the over at Brookside Park as well. And I believe that the Newtown Police helped to man that cleanup over on Brookside.
Oh, that's great.
Fantastic.
I have 3 quick things that I think are quick, but it depends on how long Mr. Neese's explanation can be. The first one is there any discussion or any plan with people getting vaccinated now and vaccinations going up about reopening up the township building?
Yeah, from the township staff side, this is the first week that the township staff is eligible to, well, there's BC 1C is available this week, and that's where local government falls. And so we are in the process right now of encouraging everyone to get registered. I've been personally trying to register, and right now there's no appointments available. I tried even last week, and they wouldn't let me register as of last week, even for something this week. So as soon as we can get everybody a chance to register, we intend to open the building back up for the purpose of doing business.
Okay. That kind of dovetails into the second question, is with regard to in-person meetings. Is there, and I guess this is going to be a discussion that we as a board are going to have, and whether we want to do it tonight or in 2 weeks. But I know the school district is back in person. Marple Township is virtual today, but I believe they're going to be going in person for the next one. I know it'll put a hindrance on some of us who have shore houses and would rather be down at the shore house. But I think that if the township building is going to start opening up, I think it's just worth having the conversation of moving forward. You know, I will also throw out there that if there's anyone who is uncomfortable, I mean, we can still do virtual and in person, like they do in not to use them as an example, but Congress and in the legislature. So just something, I don't know if we want to have that conversation now, Mr. Chairman, or.
Well, I had previously discussed with Mr. Neese, we've had discussions about when we might start meeting again in person. I understand, I mean, frankly, I've been vaccinated and everything like that. So I don't really have any issues personally, although it's a personal preference. I'm not sure I want to attend a meeting if I have to wear a mask. So I would be more comfortable in continuing in-person meetings once the mask restrictions have been listed, or when, now, again, I feel comfortable attending a meeting without a mask, but I don't want our citizens going ballistic because I show up in a meeting without a mask. So frankly, we had discussed previously, Mr. Neese and myself, just as preliminary discussions, of shooting for our first meeting in September as our first public meeting. I think at that point, mask restrictions and things like that should be relaxed enough that we can meet. But I think it's very difficult to conduct business if we're all sitting there wearing a mask and trying to speak clearly. And if we all sit there and then take off our mask to speak, you got to question, well, what's the point of wearing a mask in the first place? Plus, if there's still social distancing going around, it really cuts down the ability of our people, our constituents, to actually come to a meeting, because it substantially reduces the ability of people to fit in the building. And I know we've been getting some great attendance online here, so more so than we meet in person. So I think there's a couple of moving parts here. I'm not sure that we want to discuss it right now, but certainly it's something we can put on the agenda for a future meeting.
I think it's fair to go with the September tentative start date. I just wanted to make sure that this is something that's on our horizon as we start moving forward.
Wait a minute, you're saying put it on, put it on the agenda, we're going to do it. And I mean, I'll talk about it, later June, July, like when John said, when there's, when the restriction on masks, but I'm not committing now to September. I think we should, talk about it in a few months. I think it's premature now, But I wouldn't commit to September right now until we discuss it in detail with the full board. So I think this is premature.
Yeah,
I don't think it's premature. I think that if we want to say we'll talk about it in September, then we can talk about it in September. I only brought it up because we have not addressed it since I brought it up prior.
Right.
I know that some people don't want to be there in person because they'd rather be in other locations, and that's fine. I think that they can continue to do that. I just think it's important for us to have the conversation, to have a plan with the township building eventually going to be opening up soon. I think it's important, as the other municipalities are doing so, that we sort of follow suit as well. So that's the reason why I bring it up, and I think it's important that we had that discussion.
But the thing about one thing, Len, you mentioned people want to be other locations. Is it board members present here that want to be in other locations?
I don't read other board members' minds, Ed. So you.
No, I mean, but you brought that up. I never heard that before.
Well, what I'm bringing up, Ed, is that if there's a board member who's uncomfortable about being there physically, we have the capabilities. I don't know where you're going with on that, but they have the capabilities that they can either be there in person or virtual. We have the capabilities of allowing both, just as I said, the General Assembly does and as Congress does. That's what I was getting at. I don't know, where else.
No, you mentioned people with shore homes, so I didn't know what you were referring to there.
Can I have a question.
Go ahead, Mr. Russo.
Mr. Neese, I noticed in some of the other towns that are open do have like the permanent plexiglass across the front counter at a few of the municipalities I've been to. So my question is, what are we planning on doing? Are we looking at that now? Or are we doing a temporary, type of enclosure? Because right now, aren't we still open? Like, I mean, not open as open to go into, but is the counter still open to the public where you can just pass stuff across with no kind of partition?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Right now, the situation is that if a person comes, we take payment by somebody dropping it off in the blue box out front that we still take the public comment in. There's an opportunity for them to do it there. If something's larger, they can drop it off in the vestibule, right where the entrance to the meeting room is. We've been working with people for all of that, and that's how we've been doing functioning.
Well, no, I understand that. I mean, like Marie, the tax collector, right? She has a glass.
Yeah, but right now she is, until you had asked me to check with her. She felt that until she was vaccinated, completely vaccinated and comfortable, she was not willing to have people coming to her window.
Well, no, I get that. But what I'm asking is, so the other towns in the area that I've gone to, let's say, wherever, they have a glass partition.
Yes.
Whether it be temporary or permanent, most of them are permanent.
Yep.
And we don't have that. So my question is, what are we planning on implementing so that when we do have people vaccinated and back and ready to open up and hopefully in the next month or so, whenever that is, are we going to have the same kind of thing? Because again, it is an additional precaution. So we don't have to worry about people, obviously it's transmitted via the air. So that's my question.
Yeah. So I apologize. I misunderstood what you were headed. We have actually early on in the process when we didn't know what this was going to be. I worked with the Public Works Department and we did install a temporary, and I say temporary because it can come down, but it's a full basically glass at our front window. So it's a very large plexiglass that we put in. We do have some other things that we will have to do if we're going to open up the building in regards to some additional cleaning of some public spaces that we're not doing now. And also we would have to work, just a couple things that we would have to look at, like some signage probably saying, only related people in the elevator together, those kind of things, just like you see in other places. So we will start working on all of that now that we know kind of that we could be as early as 6 to 7 weeks, depending on how soon people can get in and get their shots. Because if you figure if you do the Moderna, for example, you get the shot and then 5 weeks later is what they're scheduling the second shot now. And then it's 2 weeks after that before a person is considered at a level that of protection. So I'm looking at that and saying once the person gets a shot, you're about 7 weeks out.
Okay. All right. Well, I understand you have it. That was my only question. Are we prepared?
Yep, we're working on all of that.
Cleaning's, you'll have to think through that.
Yep.
The last thing that I had was, we discussed this, I guess it would have been September, October of last year, or it might have been even earlier than that. And then for one way or the other, it kind of got lost on the board about going out for RFP for the different positions that we appoint every year. So I don't know, Mr. Neese, do you want us to make this motion now, just so you know? I think last time it was a timing issue. If it's better for us to just do this now so that we don't run into an issue where things go crazy and we kind of forget about it, I'm willing to start making the motion. But I also don't want, if you have something planned, I don't want to overstep you on that.
Well, the board never oversteps me if they want me to head in a certain direction. So I'm happy to do whatever the board wants me to do. I like my job. I would say that if there are certain, if you're wanting it for every position, we are starting to put together RFPs for certain things that we would be ready to do toward a little later in the year. So George and I have been talking about even certain contracts that are coming due and things like that, that we would actually get the RFPs done now. And then when the board's ready to move into the budgeting process, we would be able to hopefully run those so that you can make a decision on those things almost while you're doing the budget, is what our goal would be. Now, if you're talking about positions that are, and I'm going to pick on some folks that are online just for a minute, just because I can, like if you're saying related to your solicitor or related to your engineer or related to some of those kind of appointments, then I would appreciate knowing exactly which ones you would like us to do, or if you want us to do them all, I just need to know that, and we would start working on those as well.
So I actually, and again, I'm only one of 5, but I was going to go with everyone except for the solicitor, the special counsel, and the engineer. And the reason why my justification was for that is, even though we theoretically might save a few dollars by going to someone else, I'm just throwing this as a hypothetical, the institutional knowledge I view as more valuable than what the hourly rate would be. So I was speaking more about like the fire marshal, the assistant fire marshal, alternate conflict engineer, assistant zoning officer, sewage enforcement officer, electrical inspector, animal warden, animal shelter. And then we did just go out with the health inspector and the arborist. I don't know if we want to go out for them again, since they're fairly new, but I don't know when any of these other ones have gone out for an RFP.
I would just make note that your fire marshal is actually, and I don't know that it has to be this case, but he is actually a considered employee of the township.
Okay.
So we would have to talk about how you wanted to handle that. I mean, I think you could have him potentially you could potentially have him continue to do what he's, I don't know, we'd have to look at how his job description is written. I'm not sure exactly how that's all looking, because I think there's 2 different pieces to his job. One is inspecting where there's been a fire, and one is reviewing plans. And so I'd have to look at how that's set.
Mr. Neese, maybe it'd be easier at the next meeting if you could provide us with a list of what you and George are looking at. We can compare that to what Mr. Altieri and the rest of us are thinking, and then we can add or subtract as we need to make sure we've got a comprehensive list of, all these positions that we want to go out with, just to make sure we're getting the best for our residents.
Okay, we will do that. I will make mention, since you brought this up, we will be probably giving you a recommendation at the next meeting for a budget workshop for the board, probably in May, for the 2022 budget workshop. And the idea being that something that Leonard brought up, I believe it was probably last November or December, right as we were making the decision on the budget, he says, when does the board get to say what we really want? And so I'm going to allow you to say what you really want in May, And then hopefully I'll remember it by the time we get to November, December, when we're passing the budget. But no, seriously. what we're
Selective
thinking-
memory.
Selective memory, right. But no, in seriousness, what we want to be doing as staff and working with you is really understanding what it is that you're hoping to accomplish in light of, our strategic plan, our comp plan, all of those kind of things. What's next? What are we aiming for? And so if we understand that early, we're planning our budget around those things. And so that's the idea. We're going to present that actually at the next meeting. And it would be an appropriate time to really start looking at some of these RFPs as well, talking about, like, for example, I know that the comment of recycling has come up about doing it every week versus every other week. It comes up every time we do the budget cycle. So that contract comes up. And so now might be an opportunity to take a look at that. But we would do that early on and be prepared to have the RFP go out in the October timeframe when we're ready to make the decision.
Mr. Altieri, are you okay with the earlier suggestion about having Mr. Nish put his list together to see where we are and then comparing it to what you have?
Yeah, like I said, the whole reason why I was bringing this up is it kind of got, and look, last year was a crazy year. I fully understand that. I just don't want it to get lost in the shuffle
Right.
moving into this year.
No, I get
Yeah,
it.
and you're convinced now that we are moving forward with this?
I will be convinced when we get the list.
All right, cool.
All right.
Any other comments, Len?
No, I think we're good for now.
Any other board members would like to offer a comment? Okay, hearing nothing, we will move on to the public comment part of the meeting. Again, reminding everybody this is public comment for items that were not on the agenda. Mr. Neese, Mrs. Wilson has had her hand up for at least a half an hour. It must be tired by now. So if you could let her speak, that'd be great.
She should be able to speak now.
4111 Battles Lane. Very appreciative that Supervisor Robert Lightcap raised the issue of developers ensuring and residents ensuring that they get permits before they do work. But I fear that that messaging is not being heard loud and clear. I'm going to encourage the board to consider greater fees, because right now all you do is pay double the permit fee, and that we message, because we've gotten into a bad habit where we have developers and in some cases residents coming in asking for forgiveness when they haven't asked for permission or gotten permits. In the very recent past, we've had Mr. Rafferty build in a floodplain. We have had Hill Cadillac doing work without permits. It is not a good look for this township and is really creating some problems long term. So please consider some more definitive messaging as well as greater fees. I do appreciate that there is a desire to get back to in-person meetings, but as a resident who has appreciated this being one area where we don't have to worry about being out or being in public, but still can get a tremendous amount of information and have opened these meetings up to a number of people, I'm going to encourage you to consider either hybrid meetings or Zoom meetings for at least till the end of the year. I don't think there's any downside to that. I'm going to ask at this meeting that we get a more definitive schedule for the zoning rewrite potential meetings. Haven't heard anything more about that. Also going to encourage the supervisors to ask Supervisor Neese, or if this is not his role, to ask the tax collector to figure out maybe if there's a way you could do your tax payment online. I note that at the municipal authority meeting, our finance director has had to do an awful lot of rebooking back and forth because residents, and I'm sure part of this is because the tax office is not open, were putting their tax payments through on the sewer payment portal. Many other municipalities offer that as an option, online payment. I think for future, it's worthwhile and would result in revenue increases sooner. Finally, earlier in the meeting, you took public comment from the box that wasn't an agenda item, that was related to a hearing that's related to the zoning hearing board. So if that was not curious enough, you then took public comment from the attorney for the developer, who certainly seemed to me to be offering you some quasi-legal advice. I'm going to first say, gosh, if we have a policy in place that says the beginning public comment is strictly for agenda items, I would ask that you hold to that. Secondly, I would, as a result of hearing both of those public comments, urge you once again to take a stand here and send a message to developers, because that developer's attorney seemed to be more concerned about his developer getting delayed than the residents of the avenues who have been dealing with the infill of development there and just are desperately trying to avoid the situation we've seen in the Newtown Heights neighborhood of large houses on lots that the developers claim are lots that aren't actually lots. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Wilson. Mr. Neese, Mr. Seligson has his hand up.
Good evening, Paul Seligson, 4727 Mill Hollow Lane, also chairman of Newtown Square and Bloom. So last November, December, we planted 24 trees along 252 north and south. And these were warrior trees. We understood that they were salt tolerant, drought resistant, and we thought that they would be very easy to care for. Since then, we've learned that they actually still have to be watered. And I've approached all of the landscaping companies here in town to see if somebody would help out in watering. I've researched getting a watering truck that we could push around, and I can't find what it is I need because the water spigots are few and far between. And so the water has to be carried a fair amount of distance. So my, plea, so to speak, is to see if, since we're not doing hanging baskets, if we could use the watering truck. And not that I would ride in the watering truck, but that I would either go ahead of it or follow it. And I would stretch the hose out and fill the gator. We have 24 gator bags that are going to be connected to all the trees, and we have to fill them. It's 10 watering instances for the 2021 season. And so I was wondering if the watering truck could drive around. I would meet the watering truck, uncoil the hose, fill the water bags, and then they go to the next tree, something like that.
I believe you provided us with an email on that, Mr. Selks. I remember seeing something on that.
I did.
And I know there were some board members who thought that was an idea. I don't know whether Mr. Neese wants to address that or not right now, whether that's even feasible with Public Works or not.
I think the one thing, only concern I have is, if Paul's assisting, it's, I just want to make sure that we're not dragging him along with the hose. But, in regards to how we're moving from tree to tree, because I believe he said there's 24 trees. I know they're reasonably close together, but they're far enough away that if we were just walking all of that, it would be a little bit of a challenge. But we can work out something with him to do that, I would think.
Makes sense, Steve, for you and George and Paul to all sit down together and come up
Yeah,
with a solution.
I think that's the best thing.
I think the board's in general opinion that we want to get these trees watered. So whatever you can work out is the best way to make that happen. I think we're fine with that.
Like I said, I think we can work out something. I have a safety issue that I just have to figure out, and that's the one thing that we got to work on.
Perfect. Well, I thank you very much.
You're welcome, Paul. Seeing no other public comment, we are in adjournment, folks. Our next meeting is Monday, April 26th. In the meantime, please take care of yourselves, get your shots, and we'll see everybody back here on the 26th. Thanks for participating. Have a great night.
Bye.
Thank you.